This episode of the KrakCast is brought to you by our friends at BigDoor24.pl. It's a new service that not only matches expats with local property experts who speak their language, but it gives you cash-back discounts on successful credit applications. So go to BigDoor24.pl, that's BigDoor24.pl. Find out all the information you need to get the mortgage you want. Again, BigDoor24.pl. Make sure you use the special promo code KrakCast to get a great cashback offer. And now, on with the show.
Okay, and welcome to the KrakCast News. Sans John for the second episode running. Mike, how are you this week?
I'm doing very well. How are you?
Not too bad, sir. Not too bad. Joshua, welcome.
Yeah. I'm here.
I just call you Joshua. That's a total mistake, isn't it?
It is, but if people do it so frequently, I don't even notice these days.
Yeah, well, we'll come back to that. Okay. So what's for us this week? I thought we'd start with a bit of local news, exciting stuff. And, I think it's fair to say that I wasn't able to get an exact figure, but a fair portion of the population of Poland still live in old socialist blocks built in the 60s and 70s, 11 stories, 10 stories, that type of size, Mike. Would that be fair to say?
Yeah, the numbers I heard is about 12 million Poles, so about a third of the population.
And the issue with these blocks, apart from their ugliness, is the fact that quite often it wasn't that they were badly designed, that wasn't that these type of structures shouldn't have worked correctly. It's just that in many cases, shortfalls in materials were met with somewhat slipshod solutions. Would that be fair?
Yeah, it's fair to say that they also cut corners. I don't really know the architectural jargon there, so I'll take your word for it.
I think slipshod actually derives from back when we had horses and they were shod badly.
Well, you definitely wouldn't want a horse involved in building a modern skyscraper right now anyway, so yeah, that would be bad.
First of all, I've never lived in one of these blocks. I've never even been in really a good example of one of these buildings in Krakow. Have you any experience of the interior of one of these buildings? How are the apartments? Are they spacious? Are they nicely built?
They're basically the same nightmare everywhere you go. Half of them are usually only about, say, 30 square meters. You walk into a room, which is the dining room, the living room, and the kitchen all in one, and off to the side you have like a mini toilet and a small room, which is probably about 8 square meters. And that's like the bulk of them.
It seems to be the poured concrete, lots of styrofoam in the frames, but the issue that they're worried about, that they want to start this program of inspections over, is the facades. Is that correct?
It started off with the facades, basically, which you have the load-bearing wall, then you have like the insulative material, the styrofoam, and then you have like more concrete on top, which is the protective like layer. And lately, they've been seeing like cracking and breaking. The problem is when this falls, it can also pull down some of the load-bearing walls. Still a little word. Remember, these pieces were prefabricated, so a lot of these buildings are exactly the same, just put together on site. But this was done 30, 40 plus years ago. And most of the designers of these buildings say, like, yeah, they were designed for about 50 years. So a lot of them are starting to hit that 50-year mark or getting close to it. But we can't be 100% sure that they were put together properly back then. So, a little nervous. I think a lot of our listeners living in Krakow might be living in these buildings and, looking around right now and wondering if that crack in the wall is something they should be a little concerned about.
You get our explosion on, man. Start blowing these things up, rebuilding them, and get some of those beautiful towers that are rising all over the city in instead. What do you think, Josh?
Well, I think my opinions on kind of brutalist architecture have already been kind of expounded at great length. One of the issues, of course, is also the quality of the concrete. If concrete is not mixed correctly with the right kind of proportion of chemicals, then it will not retain its structural integrity for as long as it really should do. And actually, I don't think there's been too many in the way of horror stories about buildings collapsing in Poland that I've heard of. Certainly,
it's all happened in China, fortunately.
Certainly, there was a few notorious incidents in London in the 60s and 70s, and at least superficially, those buildings look very, very similar.
Oh, it's funny to think like, oh, look, people in the West are doing it and it's kind of falling apart. Let's copy it here in Poland with our technology and our resources.
Yeah, well, I think there might have been possibly a political kind of direction in the UK at the time that was happy to follow in the footsteps of the Soviet Union. But
the worst thing is with these buildings, even if they're shown to be unsafe, demolishing them is extremely expensive because they're very strong structures. I mean, they might lapse, walls might fall over, but you basically have to chisel away at the concrete for, weeks, months.
Oh, plus the fact there's loads of asbestos in there as well, so you have to
Can't you just blow them up?
Well, no, because the asbestos really becomes dangerous when it's when it's airborne
The
dust.
main problem with Hotel Forum, it's full of asbestos. Renovating it to get rid of the asbestos is going to cost a lot of money, and demolishing that building is even worse, and now it's protected.
If it was in the US, they just blow it up, wouldn't they?
Yeah, which is why that's why asbestos kind of damages claims are in.
John's there somewhere nodding, going, damn tootin'. Yeah.
You see advertisements on American TV for kind of like asbestos claims constantly, even now.
So what are we saying here? Do we agree with the new plan from the City Council to carry out a large-scale series of inspections? Sounds like something that's going to be necessary. What do you think, Mike?
I would definitely feel safer if somebody took a look at some of these buildings. When I'm visiting friends, I'd like to know that there's a certified seal of approval saying that this will not fall over in the next 5 years or something.
Okay, Mikrovsky, you can get on with that one. We've approved it. Right, moving on to the Karta Krakowska. Data breach! Tell us more, Michael.
Well, Karta Krakowska, which the city has been tooting and advertising intensely now for the last year or two. If you're paying taxes here, you can sign up for the Karta Krakowska, and you get a lot of deals when it comes to public transport. It's mainly made by MPK, the Public Transports Corporation, but you get deals not only on transportation but at restaurants, cinemas, entrance fees, etc., etc., etc. But it turned out a couple of days ago that last year there was a moment when most of the information was made available if you knew the password on the system. Because the password for a couple of days was, does anybody want to guess what the password was?
Admin 123.
Exactly.
It's always 123 when you call up your company IT provider, like Spring 123 or January 123. It's always something 123.
As long as it's not like my banking company I'm calling up and saying like, oh, just use admin 123. Then I'm not so worried about my router, but yeah, about my banking details, that's a little scary. Or my private data, if it's Karta Krakowska, where they have basically everything you need to set up a loan available on that server. So
it didn't look like you were finished that sentence. Sorry there, Mike. Just kind of left that one hanging out there like a stanky fart. Okay, so you sent me a link about this guy who got arrested for a public order offence. He was given Nazi salutes or something. Yeah, the article was a bit hard to follow. It was basically strange translation.
The police I think were being proud of the fact that just from some photographs and some CCTV image, they were actually able to identify a man back in January walking around during a public demonstration, did the Nazi salute. What in Poland some people joke is just like, I'm just ordering 5 beers.
Yeah, I mean, look, he's obviously a fucking idiot, but I suppose the point is should he be arrested? A greater freedom of speech type thing. Even idiots' freedom of speech needs to be protected, etc. Is that what you're driving at here, Mike?
That's part of it, yeah. And there's also this weird thing that this law is basically against propagating any totalitarian system, which includes fascism in the understanding of what you had in, say, Italy or Germany, but also communist regimes. But, you can walk around with a hammer and a sickle on your T-shirt, or with Che Guevara, and that's perfectly okay. But like I say, you order a round of brewskis for your friends, and you can end up in jail. For me, both systems, the equivalence here shouldn't really be discussed. Both these systems were horrible, and if you have a law against totalitarianism, then treat them equally as they should be. Or actually, I prefer that there wouldn't be such a law, and like we could see these assholes walking around and actually debate them in public and not like have them
and show them for the assholes that they are.
Exactly.
It's an interesting point, but I find it hard to find any sympathy for this young man here. The picture is quite clear as images go. I don't think he's ordering beers. Yeah,
something to do with the moustache and the jackboots.
We defend your right here to KrakCast to be an asshole, apparently. Okay, so moving on to hawks. This is a very interesting story. This really caught my eye, Mike. What's going on here? Have the City Council finally admitted that the pigeons have become too much?
I think the pigeons should all be destroyed. I mean,
hold on. We'll get to that. Don't worry about that. We'll get to that. The story is about introducing a hawk to somehow keep the population down. Is that correct?
Yes. Basically, what do you call a guy? The falconer.
Falconer.
Yeah, falconer. Yeah. So I don't know if he's going to have a falcon or a hawk. That's also another question. But they want to use the natural predator, bird of prey, to fly around the city and scare off pigeons or kill them occasionally. Pigeons and crows and ravens in general, like the pest birds. Because a lot of people protest against using any kind of chemicals to sterilize the birds or to destroy nests before they can lay eggs to control the population. So they're like, okay, well then we'll just use their predator to tear them, from limb to limb, to keep the population in check.
Yeah, I mean, I think everyone who lives in Krakow, if you're not used to pigeons, it's something you notice pretty quick, like how much they dominate the main public spaces. They're a bit of a nuisance, aren't they, really? Josh, opinions on pigeons?
Don't like them. Think it would be better if there were no pigeons.
They don't have a great, what would you say, reputation amongst the expats.
Rats with wings, I think is.
Wings. That's true. They smell bad, and they're freaking arrogant assholes here in Krakow. Have you noticed? You can be walking down the street, they will not get out of the way.
You know what? I remember now.
We're still on pigeons here.
Yeah, I used to live on right near the main square, and I used to walk across all the time, and they'd start swarming, they'd start taking off, and you'd be convinced, like, oh, well, they're going to fly over me, and then one would always go right at your face, like, you'd have to jump out of the way. It was scary, like,
It's like, woohoo, bird lice.
I just wanted to get a coffee, man. Okay, really made myself sound butch and macho there.
You did, yeah.
Pigeons are a part of the way of life here in Krakow. We haven't talked about pigeons much on the show.
Well, they've got kind of a sort of legendary protected status, don't they? Because they're rumoured to be the kind of non-corporeal form of this mythical army that will rise up and defend Krakow should the Tartars ever invade again.
I'm really not worried about that. Also, another thing, in Polish culture, it's considered good luck to get, a bird to shit on you.
Yeah,
I could never understand. It's like something.
Plenty of good luck falling out of the sky in Krakow. I can tell you, ladies and gentlemen.
It's like for me, it's like, oh, somebody kicked you in the nuts. That's good luck. It's like something bad just happened, so that kind of nullifies any good luck.
Hey, maybe you'd like a black eye to go with that bird shit on your shoulder.
I want to talk about this. This parking program that the city tried to implement. They tried to basically put a live parking tracking system into certain roads in Krakow and see if they could have a sign at the edge of that street indicating how many parking spaces were available. But the firm who won the tender with the city and pitched this idea haven't been able to pull it off, and it's been a total disaster. But I was thinking, like, it's an interesting idea, like, but shouldn't the city have known that there was very little chance of that working correctly? I mean, come on. I mean, in a car park, it's one thing. I've seen it operational in, say, underground car parks where you can tell on each floor how many spaces are left. They'll give you rough directions to where the vacant ones are. Mike?
I mean, the city's been trying to get people to stay out of the center of town for a while now. One of the main reasons being is the lack of car park spaces. So when you drive in, if you can't find a parking space, you just go around in circles and make the traffic even worse. So the idea of this system, which also had an app linked to it, would have meant that the driver could find out where parking space is available and go there instead of wasting time, money, fuel, building up the smog levels. I think the city spent about $500,000 on this over the last 2-3 years. It was only on a couple of streets, not on Długa, but on Szlak, Plac Matejki, in that area. And it just did not work very well. Like, cars driving by would screw up the system. The city is kind of suing the company, saying, like, where's the product? What's going on here? It was delayed for years and years and years. New car parks can install sensors and things like that. But to have it running in a city with, like, a dynamic city with so much stuff going around, maybe the technology is out there, but you know what? The city should wait for somebody else to figure it out and buy that technology instead of giving it to a firm, which I think was a little shady, was looking just for some starting capital. And now this system, so it's not a complete waste, they're going to set it up on one of those like park and ride parking lots, which only has like 50 spots anyway, so who cares? It's always empty anyway.
Now moving on to crime. We clean these streets up, Mike.
Yeah, it's a dirty, dirty city.
Yeah, one of these days, a real rain's going to fall.
Frightening, Josh, I have to say. One of our favourite topics on this show is Wisla Krakow. I think it's fair to say we've covered them quite extensively over the last year. And yet again, they're making headline news for all the wrong reasons. Mikey, why don't you give our listeners a little recap of this extremely interesting development in the world of crime?
The Centralne Biuro Śledztwa, so like the central police kind of authority, raided a bunch of homes a couple of days ago and arrested a bunch of people involved with drug dealing in Krakow. And it turns out most of these people are involved with Wisła. Either they're part of the Sharks Hooligans kind of association, and there's even been actually a rumor going around, unconfirmed, so we're just spreading rumors here that the former vice president of the board of Wisła, Mr. Dariusz D, was also one of the people involved in being arrested, who was also involved in, getting drugs distributed in Krakow and the surroundings.
Yeah, I mean, talk to me about the involvement of the ex-vice presidents. This is the really juicy bit here. Dariusz D, as he's so mysteriously monikered. Who is this
almost
fella?
sounds like a rapper name for Poland, doesn't it? Dariusz D in the house. Okay,
yeah, isn't that a standard thing though when someone's kind of under investigation or some kind of criminal thing that they're only referred to by their first name and an initial?
I assume that was to be the case. Yeah.
The thing is, what's funny is like in the media, they have to do that if somebody's arrested and been charged. So until you're proven guilty, your name cannot be used in public. So your name's not soiled and slandered if it turns out you are innocent. But the thing is, a lot of media outlets will actually, every time this happens, when everybody knows who's being talked about, they'll still use that Mr. John S. to make it sound more suspicious and evil than really he is.
Right.
But yeah, I think we just kind of went off on a tangent there, or I did anyway, sorry. No, but right now the whole situation is with these hooligans being involved, former fans and supporters of the team. And always everybody suspected that this is an organized crime syndicate. And, this kind of proves that point that the Wisła was just a front for a lot of illicit, illegal activity in the city.
I did express a concern when Kuba Boczkowski put his sterling reputation on the line for Wisla Krakow, and I hope it doesn't end up backfired on him and he gets, associated with these type of people. You'd like to think that there's a clear out been done since that new crowd took over, and that Wisla Krakow will soon be able to rid themselves of the nefarious influence of the Sharks. Although I was talking to a guy in work who was at the match recently, and he said everyone was totally wasted, like they weren't checking anybody properly on the way in, so seems like old habits die hard, although that's just rumour and hearsay. So here you go. Right, what's next? The Voivoda has gone to court with about the crappy legislation that was enacted down in Kazimierz. We covered this a few times on the show.
The green zone.
The green zone.
The low emission zone, which everybody complained about. So the city council decided to add a few amendments to the city ordinance. So previously it was only like electric cars or cars on hydrogen fuel cells that were allowed into town. And
there's so many of those, you can see them everywhere.
They watered it down so much. Everyone's pissed off now, and absolutely nothing has been achieved.
Anybody can drive into that part of town right now. You can say you're just a customer to one of the
there's
businesses.
Still plenty of cars driving around Platnovi in and around that area. I'm there all the time. I haven't
Which
seen
is pretty impressive considering that half the roads around the area are not only impassable, they're kind of, even for pedestrians, they involve serious kind of walking skills.
So wouldn't it be fair to say that people, even Polish people who like to drive fast in general, Poland, drive really slow through that part of the city? I mean, I never feel intimidated by cars once they're on the cobbles. Once you can hear the noise, it's actually quite a nice noise, the noise of a motor car gliding across
it's
heavy old medieval cobbles.
It does kind of like add to the atmosphere of the area, doesn't it?
Very good, yeah.
Yeah. So what do we think? Whose side are we on? Who cares? Ban the cars, don't ban the cars, go back to the way it was before. Seems to have achieved nothing anyway.
Yeah, I'd have to agree with all of those statements. It's basically one big mess, and everybody's trying to virtue signal. The Voivoda is like trying to show like, this legislation was appropriate, and we need to clean up the city, and the city council members have watered down to crap. But they reintroduce it. It would be.
Well, I have to say, I mean, as someone who kind of does spend a fair amount of time kind of enjoying an afternoon coffee in Platnovi, there was a period when there'd only be a handful of cars parked around the square, and that was quite nice. And then I noticed, a week or so ago, that suddenly it was back to cars nose to tail all the way around the square, and suddenly it felt like you were back in a sort of city street again, and not a sort of comfortable place for relaxing.
Yeah, you're right. There had been a drop off, haven't there?
Yeah.
I'm not being fair, actually, because I spent a good bit of time in Platnovi and walking through it as well. And yeah, actually, that's sad to know. Do you think that's related to what we're talking about?
Well, I assume so, because I know there was an issue with some of the people I know who are kind of regular customers in some of the cafes, that they're no longer so regular precisely because they can't drive, or they couldn't drive in and park up outside. So yeah, there is a relationship there, I think.
Since we're usually pedestrians anywhere, we're sitting out in these like coffee shops, it's nice when there are fewer cars there. I mean, we're definitely biased in that way, and I wish the city was set up in a way that cars could be in one area and pedestrians in another way. I mean, Kazimierz is so much nicer when there are fewer cars driving around there.
Yeah, I have to say it seems to meet all the criteria for me for a kind of car-free zone, like, you know, and just, you know, to the extent that I do sympathise with business owners having to drag their shit around the corner because I've operated on the main square, which has the same type of restrictions. But even then, they make allowances. Like, you can organise your deliveries for certain times if you tell people in advance, you know.
Sure, I mean, yeah, main square, you have to get your vehicle off by 10 a.m. or something.
But look, you know, it all ties in one for me. I don't mind the cars so much in Platsnovi because they've never done anything with the middle of Platsnovi. They've never put any money into Platsnovi, really. Platsnovi stands on the strength of the individual bars and restaurants and little clubs that are there. Like, you know, there's a lot of spots people really love, and, you know, it has its own charm, all the old buildings, etc. But the city have never really put a great strategy together for you couldn't say it was very well planned or anything.
Well, there was that mooted thing about the Ars Cinema being there, but latest I heard is I think they're going to be setting up in Dolnik Winov, so that's...
Yeah, well, I never thought that made any sense either, but yeah, but the thing in the middle of Platsnovi is a monstrosity. What do you call that anyway?
Well, it was an abattoir, wasn't it?
It's actually protected. I consider like heritage site.
Yeah, I did one of my favourite things the other day. I gave two Polish people who were obviously tourists to Krakow directions to the famous Zapiekankas. Polish people hate that when they ask me because then they realise I'm a foreigner and they're like asking a foreigner for directions. But usually I actually know. Gives me a bit of satisfaction. Anyway, moving on. A lot of stories this week. We're covering a lot of ground, Michael. Wouldn't you say?
I mean, a lot. Nothing was going on this week. So,
did you hear that this podcast finally launched its first satellite? It's taken us nearly a year, but we got it there. It's called the KrakSat. I have to say, no, I did chuckle when I seen this. Yeah, no, obviously it's not our
it's the first
satellite
association I had too. Yeah.
What is it? A bunch of students have a new idea on how to steer a satellite. It's quite an exciting project, Mike. Bring us through this magnetically fluid situation.
Basically, it makes me feel like a goddamn loser. When I was in my 20s in college, I was basically getting drunk all the time and trying to go out and, you know, have a good time. I shouldn't say more. My wife might be listening.
Yeah.
But these guys actually, you know, sit down, study, and have built a satellite. The students mainly from...
Nerds! Sorry.
It's mainly students from AGH and UJ came together and they made one of these like micro satellites, 10 by 10 centimeters. And what it has is a ferrofluid in it, which together with magnetic fields, they're hoping to find a new way to actually control the orbits of satellites and satellites in space around Earth, or change their orientation, the direction, etc., using these magnetically shifted ferrofluids. Sounds really cool. You know, and they're doing
a ferrofluid flywheel.
Basically, that's a lot of F's there. You know, these are, you know, kids in their 20s, and they're freaking geniuses putting this together. And it's been sent up to the International Space Station, launched off of the coast of the U.S. a few days ago. Mm-hmm. It's going to stay on the ISS for the next 2 months, and in June or July, depending on conditions, they'll release the satellite, and it'll be released into orbit for the next year or so.
So it's like a test satellite to test out this cool idea that they have that you can control the satellite in this new way. And I saw a line here I thought was quite interesting. Due to the low cost of such a solution, its simplicity and reliability, a ferrofluid flywheel, according to Krakow students, could be a competitive technology for those currently in use and revolutionize the global space industry. Sounds exciting to me, Mike.
Yeah, basically everybody could listen to the KrakCast, you know, with a greater likelihood thanks to more internet service providers using these types of satellites. So they'll be cheaper, you know, more internet for everybody everywhere in the world.
Josh, your amateur knowledge of science and engineering is unparalleled in my experience. What do you think about these young pups' ideas to revolutionise space technology?
I think if it's a good idea, it works, and it is relatively cost effective, then I can only give it an unqualified thumbs up with both hands.
Good enterprise and lot you. It's very rare the whole KrakCast cast is totally impressed with some young people. Very good, very good.
So is this why John's gone to Florida then to witness the launch of this new satellite, and he's going to send us a special report back?
Yes, he also has several mysterious projects which is to remain mysterious.
Okay, we'll keep those. We won't talk about those to any extent.
Eat ribs then. Probably. Hey John. Poland has decided against. We covered this story a while back about Huawei and their router technology, which is spreading everywhere across Europe. And I do believe...
When you say Hawaii, do you mean Huawei?
Huawei, whatever.
Oh, yeah, that one. The Chinese phone manufacturer. And we covered the story, the Spygate, you know, the guy from T-Mobile. What was his name again?
I don't remember his name, but he used to be involved with the Polish government's actual counterintelligence information technologies department. So, pretty high up. And he, was working for a Polish telecoms company. And then, this Chinese businessman got involved with him as well from Huawei. And
Wang Fengshi or whatever. Yeah, it was something like that. Wang Fengshu, I believe it was. But I just wanted to say that this story took me by surprise for one reason and not by surprise for another. For the reason it didn't take a surprise is the point we made when we discussed this originally, is that it's too late to pull Huawei router technology. It's all ordered. It's half of it's in place all the way around Europe. That battle has already been lost. And that's been realised now and acknowledged by the powers that be. But it's in an awkward political climate where the Poland is pushing endlessly for Trump, which is gaining more momentum than I ever expected it to. And the US have been banging the drum for the last year about outlawing this technology in the grids and networks of European 5G wireless. And yet, we're all kind of going ahead and we're just doing it. Any thoughts on this?
I mean, I kind of feel bad for the powers that be because, well, yeah, you're right. This costs a lot of money. And if they wanted to switch to other providers of technology, they would have to first take everything out of the system and then pay for the new and more expensive equipment. There's also been the whole issue of, for Trump, the Americans have suggested, we might put more soldiers there, but you definitely have to do things more along the lines of what we agree with, which meant, not using technology from China in the sense of Huawei, because, we don't trust it 100% for reasons I think are self-explanatory.
Josh?
Not really much I can add to that. I mean, I think that's exactly it. I mean, why would the Americans want to kind of invest big time on a project where some of the technology might be compromised?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, it wasn't when we spoke about this originally, I think the figure was 25% had already been either installed or ordered already. So, as I said, the ship had sailed. Kind of the US got a bit too late banging this drum, and yeah, it is interesting though. I would have worries about the potential risks to our backdoor security. Although, what are China going to do? Kind of ring us up and go, got you now. It's not really their style.
We see your browser history. You're ours.
Well, no, I mean, it is, they're not known for making highly aggressive moves, China, outside of their own sphere, orbit of
but they're trying to extend their sphere partially through technology like this. And, we really want a country where any IT company has to give full access of its service to the government if the government asks, without necessarily involving third parties, so us customers. And if you are using WeChat or any 1 cent provided service that goes through servers in China, your stuff could be being looked at by the government, no problem there. And they're collecting information for who knows what reasons. Plus, if they're using this, setting up the systems here in Poland, anytime they can turn it off or alter it in any way they want to.
We send them the blueprints of all our coolest stuff and get them to build it for us. So, what don't we send them already? Basically, I worry myself sometimes with the rise of China's cyber war infrastructure. There's no doubt it's real. It's a threat that exists. It needs
I did
to be
read
faced.
the other day that Apple is going to start producing iPhones in India, but I don't know. Maybe the Indians are now going to start kind of embedding kind of spy technology in consumer devices.
I'm worried about them doing that.
I know, but then yeah.
So moving on from Spygate, we'll keep you updated with the old backdoor router technology scandal. It's one of them stories, Mike. I talk about it, and as I talk about it, I start to disagree with myself. It's one of them you kind of flip flop backwards and forwards. Is it a big deal to use this technology? Is it not? Are we getting worried about nothing? I'm not sure, but we're moving on, right?
We're moving on.
No more opinions on this one. Okay, so obviously, we all saw the absolutely tragic scenes in France. One of the world's most beloved cultural monuments, Notre Dame Cathedral in Paris, went up in flames. And basically everyone's been watching 24 hours news feeds of this cathedral burning for the last couple of days. It's been pretty weird to witness, but obviously we don't just generally cover international tragedies, but the Polish angle here is that post, shall we say, World War II and post-Stalinist reconstructions of cities, Poland has spent an awful lot of time since 1989 rebuilding its own greatest monuments. Would you say, Mike?
Yeah, it's true. There's definitely a lot of people, a lot of craftsmen, and a lot of experienced academics that know about, the methods that buildings used to be put together like in generations past and how to reconstruct them using modern technology, but to make sure that it's as authentic as possible. I mean, all of Warsaw was rebuilt after World War II. Mm-hmm. So like their old town there's nothing authentic there, but they used the best technology they had, the best photographs and everything to make it look as authentic as possible.
I mean, the work that's been done on the main square since we got here, and I got here in around 2005 for the first time, my God, I mean, it's just been transformed. Like, it's stunning craftsmanship. Like, it really is. They're some of the best in the world. Andrzej Duda obviously sent his sympathies to a nation that the Polish have always held dear to their heart, and said, in rebuilding many cultural monuments, including sacred buildings destroyed in the inferno of World War II, Poland has educated many elite specialists in the renovation of historical objects, whose experience we are ready to share with France. How long do you think this is going to take? That's what I was thinking. I forgot to I was trying to get an estimate before we started.
Macron's saying is like, we will rebuild it in 5 years. Every expert is saying if it's double that, it's a miracle. And a lot of people are saying like, we're looking more 20, 30 years.
Yeah, no, I think even 40 years, actually. I mean, there is, not least actually, post-Second World War reconstruction, we've got loads of examples of how long it can take, especially like in Dresden and, places when they're, rebuilding kind of Gothic masterpieces where, it is complex stone masonry. I mean, you're not replacing these ornamental structures with cast concrete. I mean, really, you have to, get guys with chisels, carving it, and you can't just knock it out in a couple of afternoons.
I mean, there aren't that many. Yes, Poland has some of these experts. So does France. They had to rebuild as well. But aren't that many people who can actually do this? They're restoring buildings all over the world right now, and you need all those experts to come together and work non-stop for a project like rebuilding Notre Dame. Now this is going
you
to
never
be huge.
Meet anyone, do you, like who restores cathedrals? Like, I'm just saying, I've met a lot of people down the years and I've never met anyone who does that for a living.
Well, I suppose you don't want to admit to being a mason, really, because people get the wrong idea.
Which might be a secretive member of the Illuminati.
This is one of those like secret jobs that people always seem to have, like in romantic comedies or movies. Like, yes, I restore art or like old frescoes or something like that. I mean, actually, now I'm just thinking about Sigourney Weaver's role in Ghostbusters 2. She was also like restoring an old Gothic painting or something like that. This is like the most pretentious job. Weren't you a musician beforehand? What the hell?
That's a hell of a tangent, even for the KrakCast, Mike.
Alien babies, that's another specialism of hers.
Sigourney Weaver is performing in Ghostbusters, totally deconstructed there. You don't get that every day.
I just wanted to bring back one more like possible Polish connection, or at least my fear of a Polish connection when they said Notre Dame was burning. I just had this fear. It's like, wait, they were reconstruction work there? Maybe they already had Polish workers there. Holy crap, maybe some Polish worker decided to have a cigarette break. Oh, for God's sakes, no.
Yeah, there's been no word on what caused it so far, hasn't it? No, we'll just have to wait for a few clues.
They probably have found the guy, taking him outside the back, giving him a good sharp duffing up and saying not a word about this to anyone. Understand?
Sharp duffing up. Beautifully put, Josh. Josh, I wanted to ask you, you're a well-travelled connoisseur of modern history and science. Have you been to Paris? Have you seen Notre Dame?
Yeah, I was there. What was it? I think 2015 was the last time I was in Paris, and we visited Notre Dame. I got photographs from the inside. I mean, it's everybody has already kind of gushed endlessly about I mean, I think what is terrific about the whole fantastic about the whole story is just how much has been saved. I mean, the roof and the spire were made of wood, very, very old, very, very dry wood. So it's really, to be brutally frank, not a surprise that when it went up in flames, it really did go up. And, it does kind of raise the question as it's amazing that it hadn't happened before. But it is truly remarkable quite how much has been saved. It seems as if, as horrifying as the spectacle was, that we're not, it doesn't compare, for example, with what happened to the Palmyra temple in Syria that was deliberately kind of dynamited by a group of people.
Some people that did something,
an act of pure barbarism.
Yeah,
that's appropriate.
But what were we talking about before you upset me about
Notre Dame and Polish workers possibly smoking? And
would you like to say? I mean, I've seen one masterpiece Gothic cathedral in Strasbourg.
Oh yes.
Oh my goodness, it takes the breath away. Like, it's such a distinctive style of architecture. It has to be my favourite. Where would you rank Gothic cathedrals in the firmament?
Oh, architecturally speaking, I mean,
yes.
the joy is that there's actually so many of them. I mean, the UK, England boasts about, a good half a dozen or so, Salisbury, Lincoln, kind of, and, France is stuffed with them, Rouen, Reims, Chartres, these fantastic buildings, these flying buttresses, gargoyles, ornate windows, lofty spires, etc.
So what the gargoyles Notre Dame put in, like in the 19th century, just like with the spire, it's like a little add-on, not really Gothic there. They're not,
actually, that's it.
And they're not real water spouts either. They're ornamentative, kind of next to the light fence.
Mikey, nothing's good enough for you. Not Ghostbusters, not Sigourney Weaver, not Notre Dame Cathedral.
Demolish it and build a concrete one instead. That's it.
Okay, switching gears for
Airbnb locations there anyway, so they can build a hotel or something.
Right, well,
in the night in Notre Dame, for 35 euros.
Well, with the money being donated by the billionaires of France, they'll have plenty of money for
it's turning into some kind of pissing contest between
I was thinking that
Louis
actually.
Vuitton and
100 million?
L'Oreal.
It's 200.
Because you're worth it.
Yeah. Who are we missing? Which French billionaires have been chipped in? Yeah.
I think they all. I mean, what is it? The Arnauds, the Pinots, the Pinot Grigios, the Chardonnays.
Right, well, speaking of nothing to do with that, Polish Prime Minister Mateusz Morawiecki was in Chicago this week. Probably the most important city outside of Poland for a Polish Prime Minister to visit, I would say, Mike. Would that be fair?
Yeah, it's definitely sweet home Chicago. Best pierogis and platzkis you can get in the Midwest.
We should say you've spent some time in Chicago. Give our listeners a little
my formative years there as a child.
Formative years. It looks like a brilliant city. I've seen many kind of documentaries and travel documentaries.
It's a beautiful city, especially by the lake.
The architecture is really...
Yeah, it's famous. It's up there with New York when it comes to architecture. And, the 20s and 30s and 40s, they were basically fighting against each other who can build a more beautiful skyline. And in New York, has its buildings, but so does Chicago, the Wrigley Building, entire Gold Coast exactly. These are stunning sites. Going there on an architectural tour is definitely something worth doing to anybody. This is a KrakCast tour guide episode right now, I guess.
So this is we interviewed Bart from Enterprise Ireland, and every country tries to run this ground game when they can of getting senior politicians involved, meeting the diaspora, whipping up interest, support. Morawiecki, as an ex-banker, maybe holds even more weight talking to the business community. Would you think that he's done much back scratching on this tour?
Yeah, he's definitely gone there trying to get a little bit of bank, a little bit of cash sent, Poland's way. Trying to get the Polanushi there to feel guilty. It's like, you guys are making money in the States. How about sending some our way? But also getting local hedge funds, investors, venture capitalists in the United States interested in Poland. Talk about everything from Poland, being this growing dynamic marketplace in Europe to, being the next Silicon Valley, because everything is the next Silicon Valley nowadays.
Mm-hmm. It won't be long before some videos of him in Chicago crop up on YouTube with him performing in English, I would suspect. I'd be keen to run my eye over them and see if he can get rid of that slightly reptilian quality that he have and, project his intelligence and kind of composure. But that's pretty much it, I think, guys. Anything to add, Mike? A few stories we didn't get to, but nothing major. We'll cover it next week. Poland, yet again, kind of trying to rule itself out of the euro. Kaczynski reaching across the aisle for a deal there to kind of get some consensus.
There's the teacher strike going on, but yeah, we're definitely...
We'll talk about all that next time we're back. Anyway, it's been a pleasure, as always. Take care, listeners. Goodbye.